Let me start off by asking you this question. Are you aware of emotional pain in your life and how it may be affecting you? Are you aware of pain, but just not really sure what to do about it? I hope in this episode we can encourage you and help strengthen your healing and freedom journey. Hello, I'm Mark DeJesus here with my amazing wife, Melissa, and This is Transformed You. And we look forward to being able to discuss issues of healing of the heart, renewing of the mind, and transformation. And we pray that out of our discussion, you'll be able to experience some encouragement in your own life. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that?
I think that it's awesome. You know what? I mean, this is the theme of like pretty much everything that we do. So, you know, this topic I feel like is like kind of an umbrella in a lot of ways of so many things underneath it. So let's have a good discussion today about this.
Yeah, and that's our goal in the content that we put out is we have some thoughts and some subjects, but we really try to, through conversation, just share our hearts and bring it out. So we hope that it adds value to your life. So what we're going to get into, and there's a lot of, at the time of this recording, there's certainly a lot of changes that people are going through. There's a virus going through the world, and so people are in social isolations and things like that. But I think that we want this episode to not only speak to that time, the time that we're in, but also anybody down the road that's going back and seeing this episode, that they can begin to address pain in fruitful areas of their life in effective ways.
Yeah, and just to even talk about that during this time, a lot of people are spending time with their families in an extended period, or the kids are trying to do schoolwork, you're trying to keep them busy, and you're alone. Mm-hmm. And you're having time by yourself that you don't normally have. And there's things coming up and things happening inside you, around you, that may need to have some help in identifying what's happening.
Yeah, because doesn't when we get the busyness slowing down, it reveals like what's there, the pain, the emptiness,
right?
The
things you haven't dealt with.
Totally. And I think that we've lived for a long time in cultures where we don't know how to identify pain. We feel that that's going to be a slippery slope, right? And then, you're talking too much about your feelings and talking too much about the past, and let's just move on. And we kind of have all these different ways that we approach it, and we never recognize, wow, a lot of what you're doing is actually being motivated out of pain places,
right,
that you're not dealing with.
Right.
Comes to parenting, comes to
everything,
marriage,
your free time, literally everything. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. We don't realize that.
So when we talk about pain, we talk about it in kind of two areas. One area of pain is experiences, things that have happened to you that pierced you, wounded you, created a sense of limitation, painful in that kind of way. Then the second area of pain is a little bit more difficult to identify, and it's more in the pain of emptiness or the pain of lack, meaning that there were some things that you should have or could have received in life and didn't. I'm not talking about entitlement kind of stuff where like I deserved this, but like growing up, being told that you're loved, being in a safe environment and not having that. I find that the second one's the most challenging one to identify.
Yeah.
And we like to bring a balanced perspective of helping people to say, okay, this affected you. Now let's, in productive ways, try to work through this, because most of the stuff that's manifesting in our life that we don't like or it's not fruitful, it goes back to a root system of pain.
Absolutely.
So when did you come to an awareness? Is there a point in time where you became more aware of like, this is painful, this creates pain in my life, I see how pain has become something that's influenced me and I need to be more aware of it? Do you have a time? Not necessarily.
No, I don't. I don't think that there has been like, I can look back and go, I have markers of deeply painful things, right? Max's diagnosis. There's a bunch of different things in our life, but I've been on a journey of giving a lot of my emotional pain that language and understanding And it's taken us digging deep into things of like, hey, why am I acting like this right now? What's going on inside of me? And us looking at it and going, okay, this, and kind of taking the trail, So I'm grateful that that we've been able to do that. But I think probably, I don't know, I have a bunch of traumatic things in my life. I think we all do. You can look back and, remember things from childhood. Yeah. Just there are those markers where you're like, wow, those were really just so painful.
I feel that for me, there was a deep emptiness that I carried, that what awakened some things of healing in my life was some times where I experienced prayer with someone that was healing prayer. And I remember one time specifically the words of love of a father being spoken over me.
Yeah,
and how
that's a good one.
Well, what this is what it did. It made me realize, wow, I never heard that. And it hit like this empty place that I didn't know existed. I remember having a conversation with someone where, like, I apologized for something that I did. And their response was, I appreciate what you said because it brought out something I didn't even know was there. Right?
Yeah.
So going back to my experience, the words and the affirmation and the love of Father God, it brought out that I was disconnected from experiencing that love in many areas of my heart. There was many empty areas. And it helped me to awaken to, no wonder I'm so emotional and all over the place.
Right.
It's not been stabilized in love.
Yeah.
So the pain of emptiness was actually a place of introduction. And then later on, the painful experiences of life. Now, typically when I work with people, it's the other way around. They usually, I had this happen, this happened, this happened. And then I have to bring them into the introduction of like those empty places, right? So, because growing up, I had a makeup that was very different from my parents. I have a mixture of them, but their generation wasn't taught how to emotionally healthy connect in certain things, especially with pain or woundedness. So it was kind of, I call it the stiff upper lip kind of thing. You just kind of soldier on, you just keep going on, because looking at that and pausing is too painful and it's unproductive and it's too emotional. You don't want to go by your feelings. So we just kind of dismiss the whole thing. So me growing up, I was very like creative, emotionally wired, sensitive to things. And it's just like, it's like a wire that's just like live with all these different emotions going all over the place. And I needed love to be like a conduit to ground it.
Right.
And so it was during that I began to see, wow, my grid of what I didn't receive needs to be filled. Like I need to know God's love and his nurture. I don't have any references for that. I need that. Otherwise, this pain is going to manifest in a lot of areas.
Yeah. That's the one thing I think that I can encourage most parents too, when you're going through things in life with your kids. Sit them down. Hey, how does that make you feel? Just even those questions. Like, were you ever asked that question?
No.
I was never asked that question.
And I think a lot of people, a lot of Christians will say, and you'll hear it out there, oh, this feeling stuff.
Yeah, we've gotten a comment or two. Enough with the feelings, right?
Well, sure,
right.
sure. And it is a perspective, right? Because we've gone so far in an opposite direction,
right,
that talking about feelings, just the subject, looks as though it's going to be way deep on the other side.
Right.
And so there's a lot of expression, though, in the Bible of emotional pain that we ignore.
Right.
So how do we deal with Jesus sitting in the garden and saying, my soul is sorrowful to death?
That's pretty intense.
Right? Most modern Christians will step in and say, Jesus, don't say that.
They would.
Jesus,
right, if they were in front of him, they would
Jesus,
say that, right?
You're lost in your feelings. You got a job to do. Get with it. Or when he's standing at the tomb of Lazarus and he's about to raise him from the dead, and the Bible says Jesus just wept, like he just cried. You see the expression in David. You see all throughout, there's different moments where there is a connection to the pain of the moment. A lot of the Old Testament, if you get like past like, a lot of people are like, man, God seems really intense. If you kind of like get past that for a second and just go, wow, you see the spectrum of God working through what humanity's choices do to his heart, how he feels. You see it there. You see it through the cries of the prophet, the cries of the people, and God continually saying, turn, come to me. They don't. Consequences happen. And then he comes back with his mercy again, and it comes around again. And it's like over and over and over again, we see this emotional, connected aspect. And I think that's the heart healing journey involves connecting with God. And I use this term because I know that even saying this, people can take me the wrong way. Connecting with God in an emotional way, not that you're looking for an emotional hype. You're just being authentic in your exchange with him,
right?
And being real about the pains, because if you don't recognize it, then you can't like deal with it. So,
and it takes some time to work through because it's awkward, right? So the original design is that your parents modeled that for you so that when you then are introduced to your Father in heaven, it's an easy exchange and you know how to interact with him, right? We don't know what that feels like. So I understand and get where Christians are like, don't go there. That's too much. Just believe in him and have that force of belief and faith and soldier, which we should be. We are soldiers in the kingdom. But there is this other aspect that we are completely negating when it comes to understanding his true nature of love and nurture and really being able to experience that, because we have all this stuff clouding us and we really need to start to get to the heart of that so that can get fruitfully exchanged with God, where we get healed and then have more empowered encounters with him in how we walk through our daily life and deal with pain and deal with ups and downs. And
so let's maybe share some examples and kind of talk through it a little bit, because it can kind of give some branches to what happens when we're working through pain and stuff like that. And it reveals oftentimes how people don't know how to handle it. One memory that comes to my mind that I mentioned just before we hit record today is after we had Max and you were pregnant again, and we were so excited and we decided to announce it. We were pastoring at the time. And so we announced it to the congregation. It was like, hey, it was a celebration. And then the next day we went for a checkup.
the ultrasound, yeah.
For the ultrasound. And it was
There
like,
no heartbeat.
it was a, put your microphone a little closer.
Oh, sorry.
And we're sitting there and, they're doing the scans and all that. And then they just walk in and go, I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat. And it's like, just hits you, right? And so there's different layers of processing that, because one, we just shared this awesome news, and then now this like big hit. And it hit us so suddenly, it was like just kind of brought out just ugly, just pain and ache. And I think there was a couple things that I saw in that time was we had to learn how to actually grieve, how to actually process it. We realized, okay, we got to face this. We can't just like run from it. But then it also brought out, sadly, responses from people that showed people don't know how to interact with your pain in fruitful ways. We're so quick.
Mainly Christians.
We're so quick to give a solution answer, right? It's sad because it reveals that we don't know how to process our own pain, because we're just kind of like, I can't deal with this uncomfortableness, so I'm just going to try to say something. So then I had to, then we're sharing back with the church again, hey, just let you know, this is what happened. And we had, shared it at the time, shared it on social media. And there's just certain quick comments. One person in particular tried to put it in a nice box and tie it up. God knew this, and there was a problem with this, and God did it. It's a typical pattern Christians fall into, where we want to orchestrate what the plan was. Well, God knew that all this, and he this and this. And we use all these things to like.
And I had someone tell me that the Lord told them I was going to lose the baby.
Yeah, that's fun. That's really fun. And then like a comment like, a quick comment like, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, really? Like that
doesn't help.
Yeah, that triggers a whole bunch of pathways
First of all, like how ugly like is God? Like I don't know. That for me anyway.
Yeah. So it made dealing with pain that much more difficult.
Right.
Because you're like, when I share it, I'm getting these stupid statements.
Mm-hmm. Then during that time too, I don't know if you remember, but there was a person that was attending our meetings because we weren't fully a church yet. We weren't.
Yeah,
church didn't. No, we had a lot of meetings. We weren't fully a church Sunday morning yet because we did when Abby.
Right. We're
Sunday
we were still
nights. Doing right. So there was someone that was attending our meetings, and she had lost a child. And I remember thinking,
well, you got to clarify what you mean by that, because
it was a young child that
right.
had died sickly. So
right.
I remember at the time thinking, my pain is nowhere near hers. I have no right to even be sad. I remember
right.
thinking that.
Right.
Even like this, who are you? Because her pain is worse than yours.
Do you remember how old the child was?
I want to say the kid was like 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you look at our journey where it's like, okay, that happened, before
I was, 11 weeks. Yeah. Right.
And they have a 5-year-old
that they had to watch. Right. So and everything has its perspective and everybody has their own pain, but there was such an up and down of that during that time, because at that time too, Max was losing speech. He was losing skills that he had gained, and right. we hadn't quite come to, he didn't have a diagnosis yet, but because it was still so early on because he was little. So we were dealing with that fear stuff too of what was happening with him. So we had a lot, if you remember, swirling at that time.
Totally. Totally. And it was wonderful because not too long after, Abby came into the picture. But you bring up a really great point, though, because many times when we go through pain, there's this like, hey, we're struggling to pay the bills, but there's starving people in Africa.
Right, where we dismiss our own pain. Yeah.
And I think that there are times where I guess that could lead to maybe gratitude.
Right, in a
perspective. It could be worse.
Right.
But I don't know. I feel like, because comparison's never really a good thing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It can be really tricky because it's like, but we don't recognize that pain is pain.
Right.
And what you need is empathy, because that's just where you're at. So what's painful for one person may not be painful for another person.
Right.
Somebody could go through, like I've had this discussion with people about like economic hard times. And there is a part of me where it's like, we've been through so many different seasons of it, right? But it's like, wait, this is this person's like first time going through, economic hardship. So I need to realize that and recognize that. And so it's always helpful to lean towards empathy, because we're so quick to dismiss by the way that we talk to people. Oh, God is greater. He's got a plan. Mm-hmm. It's like that can be, your exhortations can actually be hurtful because the timing is off.
Right.
It's not what you say. It's also the spirit behind what you say and also the timing of it. And people say, well, how do I know the timing? Well, just be more quick to just listen.
Right.
And
take offer help. Yeah. I think the biggest thing you can say to somebody is, I'm so sorry you're going through that. If there's any way I can help? Mm-hmm. Just be available to people.
Yep. And I think that now in the season that people find themselves in, I think it's important that you recognize those feelings of emptiness, feelings of pain. And this can be an opportunity to have healing discussions, to invite God in, not to say, rescue me out of this, take this all away. We pray that prayer a lot, right? It's natural to go, God, just, get me out of this. But to lean into it, there's so much you can actually learn and grow in through painful times that you just don't learn when everything seems to be going well.
You don't. Right.
So anyway, I talk about this in the Heart Healing book, and in fact, I dedicated a whole chapter on just seeing the signals of pain and being more fruitful in how you approach it. And I talk in it about some signs of emotional pain. And here's just a few of them. Relational disconnection. So maybe some isolation, anxiety, depression, panic attacks, numbness, addictions. That's a big one. This restlessness, irritability, anger, mood swings, sleep issues, becoming intensely driven, or just super like busy striving. Maybe you become obsessive and compulsive in certain patterns, high intense perfectionism, or just chronic busyness. What would you say is the one, or maybe a handful of the ones you see that you're learning is a sign that there's some pain I just need to allow God to work on?
For me, relational disconnection
Okay.
was, I think, a very big pattern in my life where I kept myself on the, I don't want to say on the outside of situations, but I never felt truly present in relationship with people. I never felt that way. I always was drawn to like the chaos of life to kind of distract me. So I would find distractions in drama, in kind of silly, stupid things that kind of kept me dysfunctional. I didn't really know how to engage it and go, all right, what is going on? That fight I just had with my sister, that thing that just happened at my house, this thing that happened with a boy. Like, I am dealing with pain. I did not know how to really identify that at all. So those are the things that would kind of pop up for me. What about for you?
The word that you said that really hits my heart is the word distraction. Mm-hmm. I think that we as a culture are super distracted from what needs to be dealt with.
Yeah.
We just distract. Maybe we just hope it'll go away on its own. Maybe it'll just solve itself. Maybe we just don't know what to do with it anymore.
Yeah.
We become just stretched beyond our resources. I look at this and I'm like, why do I write all these things so extensively? Because I've been through them all.
I know we have, right?
And I think that the OCD one's a big one for me. That was very helpful for me. Because once I learned, because the time that the miscarriage, Max is showing signs of being on the autism spectrum. We're like working with a church that is forming. We're under tremendous financial stress. We're coming out of all these transitions. At the time, my skin was starting to flare up with psoriasis. Mm-hmm. The list goes on and on. I became highly obsessive at that time.
Yeah.
And really struggled. And what helped my healing journey was these symptoms that you're struggling with. Don't just go, I need to be better. I need to be better. There was this driving force of like, I need to be better because I should be an overcomer. I had this subliminal, subconscious kind of teaching in me that came from various avenues, and some of it healthy, but some of it really unhealthy. I just need to be good in every situation.
Right.
And meanwhile, pain's oozing everywhere.
Yes. I'm so glad that you just made that statement, because it was the point that I wanted to bring out, especially about that time. If I was to look at our journey of the most like engaged, fiery, supernatural faith where we were at, was at that time. Like, so it would hit us of no, you need to believe in the miracle. There was that like subliminal, something's wrong with you if you don't believe for the miracle to just happen, and keep fighting that no matter what is blowing up around you. Now, is there truth to that? Yes. But underneath that was a lot of layers of like, what did you do wrong? There's something to this that you have in your life. There was a lot of teachings that were messing with us too.
Right. Because there's like,
that didn't let us experience and understand we were in grief and we were going through stuff.
Right. And a lot of pain needs to just be processed, not fixed.
Correct.
Right? We go to God and we're like, I'm in pain. So there's something. The two traps I have, especially during those times, it took me a while to break through them, and they still want to creep up, is number one, there's something you did wrong. that's connected to this. 2, there's something you're not doing that you should be doing.
Right.
So those 2 thoughts came against me in very tormenting ways, and they kept me in like a striving to try to find the breakthrough answer, and prevented me. There's a lot of good things, quote unquote, in Christianity that actually prevent you from just feeling the pain.
Right.
Right. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna fast this. I'm gonna
like
whatever.
we had those mountain moving prayers where we're laying next to Max's crib at night, and you have, those of you know what I'm talking about, when you have those prayers where you feel all of heaven in you in that moment, and you're like,
right,
autism's going to fall out of his physical body right now, or I'm going to wake up and he's going to go, hi, Mom, and everything is going to be completely healed. You all know what I'm talking about, where you have that faith that is mountain moving and nothing happens.
Right.
And in that moment, we have had to learn so much through all of those times on what it means to recover when you don't get the miracle, right?
Yeah.
And staying steady in your faith, learning to grow, but being okay to just go, this is really hard.
Right. We want to move past that as quickly as possible.
Yes.
And I
figure out what's the thing. I didn't say the right thing right. Maybe I didn't say it right. Maybe I need this prayer. And, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. I think there's some things that pain brings out. It brings out how we respond and how we cope, which we can get into that. I think it also brings out our current God lens. So how you see God, if you see a God that's just like, just get up, get over it, just keep on moving on, or if your God lens is a God who leaves you hanging all the time, which usually our God lens comes out of our history, our upbringing, that then when these painful things happen or emptiness manifests, it brings out how we see God, and so that's what actually needs to be enhanced during pain. I need to learn God in a deeper way versus my simple ABC kind of thing, cliche. People who talk about God in a cliche way, they lack depth because they haven't faced their pain yet, or they haven't gone through some stuff, right?
Right.
So, like, what are some unproductive ways people respond to pain? I mean, many people just deny it. I mentioned the stiff upper lip.
Sitting on Candy Crush for hours.
Numbing how?
I don't know because I don't do that. So I'm joking. I do that every once in a while. I'm just saying. No, but I think
I don't think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that, like, there's times in our life where we've accessed pain in a lot of areas. And when you go, you know what, we've done what we need to do in exchanging this with God.
Right.
I don't know that we need to like
beat it to death.
You know what, today we're going to do this. We're going to laugh. We're going to work on a home project.
Right.
I'm going to go work in the yard and enjoy it. We're doing painting projects right now. We go, you know what? We're going to do some painting projects. So I think that we have to find where our extreme bent is.
Correct.
And adjust that so that we're productively allowing God to work in it. And I find what will happen is pain can swell up. We try to deal with it. And then sometimes it just still creeps underground and something comes through. Anger, stress, overwhelm. And you go, oh, all right, God, just need to be able to work this through with you and process out and then go from there. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I think that we've had to really learn how to do that with each other. In times of where maybe you went to perfectionism and busyness, and then in my own world of being at home with the kids and doing those things of like, I'm just going to do the dishes and laundry and head down and be in my own world all day long. We had to get better at just even simple conversations of, hey, I just want to let you know, this is what I'm kind of going through today. And be that check for each other too, to just talk out the pain points. Because
we know most of the healing happens in just sharing it,
just the expression
and having it land. Like, it doesn't need to be fixed right now. It needs to be expressed.
Right.
And that's a missing element, because even in my my writing, my work, and encouragement with people, the ultimate thing of this subject that we're talking about is get better at identifying pain in your life, but B, learn to have healing conversations.
Yeah, because I was just going to say, too, when we even have little pit stops throughout the day with each other and you look into my eyes, and so you have this face sometimes where you're like, yeah, I get it. He does that. It's like, it helps me.
That's cool.
Yeah, like just, you have that, not that pronounced maybe, but you have that way of like, where you kind of put your lips to the side and you're like.
Right.
But you're looking at me, connecting to me about it. Like,
yeah.
And now we're to the point where sometimes you don't even have to say anything. Like, you'll look at me and I know that you're with me in it, because we've worked at getting to that point. But it just helps where you just support me with your eye connection, your love for me. It really does help.
I think it's something I've had to learn, though.
Oh,
even though I was incredibly emotionally wired all over the place, you'd think, oh, he's sensitive, so he's going to be great. And no, sometimes the default response could be, are we talking about this again? Or, I thought we were past this, or there can be. And so I'll notice that if I'm not in that empathetic place, it's a good signal to go, I got some things I got to work through. I got to slow down, get back to, connecting from my heart. And it's really not rocket science. It's really just, if you're sharing, I'm just paying attention to what you're saying. And I'm aware that I could very easily be there myself.
Mm-hmm.
It brings to mind this scripture where Paul in Galatians, he's talking about restoring people that have fallen. Mm-hmm. And he says, do it. Restore other people in meekness, because you could also be tempted. And there's a interpretation there where it's like, when you're working with someone else, whoever it is, whatever issue they're struggling with, realize you could be right there too.
Right.
How does that change the dynamic when you're talking to someone? Because what happens is we'll hear someone and we're like I remember there was a time I was sharing with a guy that was training on a leadership team. And I shared something I was struggling with. And his reply was, yeah, I don't struggle with that. And I wanted to, and I speaking of crazy thoughts, I had a thought come up to lunge over the table and just knock him right out, because that's the worst thing you say to somebody when they're, sharing a struggle, right? It's just taking a moment, even if you don't, if sometimes we dismiss the empathy we could carry. Someone loses a child and you go, well, I haven't lost a child. I can't imagine how you feel. Well, try.
Right.
Try just for a moment, and don't tell them you know how they're feeling. Just a lot of times you'll share something with me and I'll nod. I just look into your eyes. I just take in what you're saying, and I don't feel the hurry to say something other than, yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Yeah. And then I connect to that, realizing I could be there too.
Right.
And this is the power that James talked about when he said, if somebody is in need of healing, create an environment where you can confess your trespasses one to another, that you may be healed. That is not done unless there's an environment of safety. And safety is I carry what you're saying, and
protect it, cherish it, respect it. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm allowing, by just the atmosphere I carry, to there be an opportunity for God, and maybe to lead us further into some things.
Yeah, I feel like with that statement, though, a lot of people are like, time out. I don't know anybody. I think I've even seen, in the comment section several times, how do you find these people? How do you find safe people?
Right.
It is difficult. I'm not saying that is just an easy thing. Hey, find yourself a safe person, and it's going to be great for you.
Right.
For a lot of people, their spouse isn't even safe. So,
and if you feel that struggle, everybody who wants it to some degree is facing that. So I think sometimes just setting the expectation straight, that this isn't a thing where the sea is just flowing with all these safe people and they're just everywhere. And so just take the step. No, it takes a lot of patience.
Right.
It takes actually working it out.
Self-awareness. You have to be self-aware to be safe. like, wait, what did I just say to that person? I have a lot of moments that I wish I could go back to where I didn't display safety to people, and I hate it. I wish I could go back and change it.
Me too.
I didn't know how to be safe.
Yeah, me too.
I was so caught up in how I was feeling and all my rejection issues, and
Totally.
So it takes time to learn to be safe too, and to,
Sorry, I had a bunch of flashbacks.
I know. I was like, wait, hold on. Ew.
So I think that I'll put myself in that place. What was helpful for me, because I've gone through many seasons of my life where it's hard to find safe people. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when I do step in, here's a problem that I bumped into, and I've just had to accept it, is I'll step into a safe relationship, and then they end up like coming to me for help. Yeah, and I'm like, wait, I was coming to you to process some things. No, I mean, that's a whole nother subject, right?
You do have great things for people, though.
Oh, thanks, son. But anyway, I think where I start, and I'd invite anyone to start, is learn to be safe in how you interact with yourself. Because I think that's a pandemic issue. Speaking of pandemics, is that we are not safe in how we look at our own pain. So when I did the book, God Loves Me and I Love Myself, which that was a defining shift in the next stage of ministry work, really began out of my own journey, which was I got to learn to see myself in the lens of love, kindness, acceptance, patience, right? Those three things are incredibly important. And when I did that, now I bring that to my interactions with people. So whether it's someone I'm coaching, a friend, a family member, the mailman, a neighbor, someone at CVS, what I see in myself and how I cultivate that, I bring that to the situation.
Right.
And so then it helps me to practice how to have healing conversations with people where they just feel safe. And I'm not trying to fix them. I'm not trying to fix anybody. And lastly, I would say we have to practice this out with God in learning how to take pain, give it to him. And I don't want to get cliche about this and just we're pass over people's head, but where you actually talk out the pain of it. And then you allow in the just stillness to just let the waves of what God says and allow your thoughts to just be renewed of God's healing work. That takes training. It takes some patience, but it really just takes practice.
Right.
Of like, okay, God, here I am, and I'm struggling. This hurt. This was painful. This is what it made me feel. And I give it to you. And then you pay attention to what bubbles up as you surrender that to him. Scriptures, kind of maybe healing thoughts that help disempower some of those thoughts that rose up that are, eating you up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So anyways,
I know. I think that's really good. It does take practice and it does take time, and take those moments. And even if do the old school, put an index card on your mirror. Be loving and kind to yourself today. Is there one thing that you can recognize that maybe you're going through that you can put a name to and then exchange that with God? I think just sometimes even just those practical things help.
Right. And you just recognize when you're just empty, don't just rush to the next thing.
Right.
And it takes...
We got all kinds of time now. So take the time. If you need to tell the kids,
totally,
watch a movie, I'm going to go sit in my bedroom and leave me alone for a half an hour. Do that. It's important to not let these times bowl you over with the fear, the stress. I got to go buy toilet paper. I got to buy chicken. All those things. Take a minute, because your emotional safety, because we're all going to come out of, you usually come up and out of these times. Do you want it to do it healthily, or do you want it carrying more baggage?
Right, because that's what pain, unhealed, unprocessed pain will do. So this is a good time to bring those things before God. So I hope this conversation was helpful and fruitful and a blessing to your life. If it was, please comment and share it with people in your life who could be encouraged by it. We pray you're encouraged by our discussion. Go to myhearttojesus.com. And if you appreciate the materials, would you consider a one-time donation or become a regular supporter of what we're doing? And a lot of further things can be found in the book that is called The Heart Healing Journey, as well as I also mentioned the book God Loves Me and I Love Myself. Those are 2 recommended action steps we'd encourage for your life and for your journey. But we look forward to seeing you again next time. Thank you so much, everyone. God bless you.
Thank you.